Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. Tuesday afternoon, August 13th, maybe, 2024. It was a beautiful day, weather-wise and any other way I can calculate it. And the UPS truck just brought my axles. I thought they might be here yesterday, but they weren't. I had more time to prepare for their arrival, and here we are. As promised, we need to go over a few options if you want to source them yourself, or if you want to order them, what I consider properly anyway. The first thing you're going to encounter in the world of axles, if you go online, Jegs, Summit, Speedway, etc., is the cut-to-fit axle. And that's probably what Quick Performance is using as well. It makes sense if you're a shop that builds rear ends. A cut-to-fit axle, they come in a long and a short, and they cover a range. You can cut off the end, and they come with a lot of spline, 8 or 9 inches of spline. And you could run it that long, or you can cut the spline end off to suit your length. And that part's wonderful. However, the problem arises in my first experience with cut-to-fit axles. I bought from Jegs. They were $150 a piece, maybe less. This was 10 years ago. And they were Speedmaster when I got them. And if you've ever dealt with a company and you have a tech question, good luck. My question was, they were clear you needed to buy a spacer that goes under the bearing. My question was, in a 9-inch Ford, you have 2 break offsets that are popular, 2.36, which I have in my early big Ford housing ends, and 2.5 for the late big Ford. That's the distance from the outside of the axle to the outside of this flange. And it's pretty important because your brakes aren't going to fit if you don't have the right brake offset. Furthermore, if you don't get the spacer the correct dimension, width-wise, you have to press the wheel bearing off and on. You can't take it back off and reuse it, unless you have some kind of magic I'm not aware of, but I would not trust it after I've forced it off and on. On is one thing, but back off, they typically don't come off very smooth. So I called them and wanted to know what dimension the spacer that they sold, that I had to pay extra for, what offset was it cut for? And I might as well talk to that spacer because they don't know. No one in that company could get me an answer. They want to know if I figured it out, I could call them back. Again, I don't want to waste a set of bearings that I also had to buy extra. This is all tallying up to what a waste your average cut-to-fit axle is. I managed to figure it out. It's not an easy figure because the bearing itself sticks out of the housing slightly, so that all has to be calculated in, but I figured it out. You would have thought I might have written it down, but I did not. So here we are, present day. A few weeks ago, I was in the Speedway garage sale section, and they had a set of cut-to-fit axles in the length that would have worked for me. And I had them in my cart. They were about $340 with the bearings pushed on, and it had press-in, 1/2-inch fine thread, 2-inch long studs. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but it wasn't a bad deal. However, almost all completely assembled cut-to-fit axles you find are late big Ford. Every housing you find lately, pretty much everybody's gone to the late big Ford. Me, wanting to run my early big Ford brake kit, I was pretty much gonna have to go my own way to get the 2.36 offset instead of the 2.5. I also wanted a few other options. I don't like press fit wheel studs. They're okay in your average vehicle, and I have some 9-inch Fords around here that I have pressed in studs in. But given a choice, especially where it does not cost me anymore. When I called Quick Performance, I could specify what I wanted for a wheel stud and how long. So I bought my axles from Quick Performance, and here's what it costs. Again, comparing to about $350 of the cut-to-fit, fully assembled axles that I had in my cart in Speedway. So I upgraded with Quick Performance. I wanted thread and wheel studs. 2-inch, I didn't need the 3-inch, but I could easily swap them just by spinning the bolt out and put it in a different hole, because for $15 I could order a second bolt pattern additional. So I went with 4.5, which is small Ford and Chrysler, and I went 4 3/4, which is GM. Another thing you don't want to do, and it's an option, but you can buy a 7/16 stud. That's what a GM came with originally. You want to get rid of those as fast as possible, preferably on the front as well. But I can stomach, you know, I run a pretty small front wheel, the 7/16 stud in the front of a hot rod or something, a race car, no. But in the rear, you want at least a 1/2-inch stud. I mean, 5/8 is the race car stuff, so. But never, if you build a 9-inch Ford, waste your time putting a 7/16 stud in the axles. So that's my opinion, and I welcome yours. So I got 2 bolt patterns, thread-in studs. The brake register, that's this section here, 2.77 is standard Ford, both late and early big Ford. Then we had bearing options. If you study these housing ends, this is a late big Ford made by Strange. There is no provision. The ones I welded on the housing we did in the last week, my housing ends are twice as long, and there's a reset cut way down, so this seal is going to ride right here. When you choose to seal off this area, that means you're running a sealed bearing. In this style housing end, you need the bearing itself with an O-ring groove that's about 3/4 of the way out, and it seals into the housing on the O-ring groove. I could have that same bearing here. I could have it doubly sealed. I could have a seal here, plus the O-ring there. I actually would have preferred that, but I didn't specify. I'm sure it wouldn't have cost any more, but it is kind of redundant because I'm driving this seal into my housing, and my axle shaft actually seals here, and my bearing is sealed for life. And when I put this in the housing, you know my love for silicone is not strong, but I put some clear RTV with I'll wipe it around my finger on the housing. Yes, it'll help stop oil if this was to fail. However, it also, a bigger concern, a street vehicle, I don't really want water working its way in there and rusting the bearing to the housing, because it's dry out here now. There's no wheel bearing out here. The other bearing option, so you could have a drive-in seal, a bearing with no O-ring but sealed. You can have a sealed bearing with an O-ring for a housing end that gives you no other choice. You can also have a tapered roller bearing, which is just what it sounds like. There's no seal. You have live oil coming down the axle tube. You have a race that slides in, same size, 3.15, goes into the housing end, just a loose fit. It doesn't spin. It's, you know, a phenomenon. And you actually have an open tapered bearing on one side, and you have a seal on the outside that the retainer plate is going to hold in there. And that's not a bad setup either, but you are relying on oil coming down the tube to lubricate your bearing. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I'll take the sealed bearing. You look at all the front-wheel drive vehicles these days that had a sealed bearing in there for a long time, and wheel bearings last a long time. So I think I'm okay with the sealed bearing, and should it ever fail, I'll take my chances. I prefer not to have live oil out here. But again, it's your personal preference. Either one works, either one's fine. I've done them both. This is easier. This is about the easiest setup. I don't have to worry about the O-ring, which is also easy, but you drive the seal in, just don't wreck the seal putting it in. It's about a $2 seal if you do. And send a little clear sealer. Put this in On my drum brake, the retainer plate, obviously you got to put the T-bolts through the housing. The T-bolt locks itself here on the housing end. These would take 3/8 because that's late Big Ford, but early Big Ford are 1/2 inch, and you don't have to hold it. It's nice. You just push it in through the. You got to set the backing plate on the T-bolts because that's all that's going to hold it. Slide the axle in. It sticks. The axle bearing is slightly proud, I guess you'd call it. Not much. And then on a drum brake setup, it's open. You don't have to put it on ahead of the bearing. If this was closed up, you'd either have to cut it or press it on first. And in my case, it goes up this way, the opening toward the top, because there's the balance bar for the parking brake is also for the braking itself is, across to the top. So this goes up on the top. You carefully start the nuts and bolts. And when you tighten this shouldn't bend. If this bends and this isn't flush, something else is wrong. This should remain flat. If you've ever had one that wouldn't go together, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of people just go ahead and wind that in, think it's okay, and I guess it doesn't fall out. However, it's not correct. This should not bend. You should not need any spaces or gaskets or anything crazy. If this doesn't go in with your backing plate and this go up flush, something's wrong. Your axle's not all the way in. Who knows? In this case, my Detroit locker, there's no center pin. I have splines all the way through. 31 spline. Another option you have to choose. In cut to fit 31s, they have 28s and 31s, and you can get a 35 spline. There are no cut to fit 40 spline axles that I'm aware of. Be aware that some of your disc brake kits, you still need to use this. The disc brake caliper bracket will take the place of the backing plate, but you still got to use this. And that's where people go wrong. I think they try to leave it off, or I'm not sure where the trouble begins. I don't like what I call inexpensive disc brake kits. They're heavy. It's a lot of extra parts. The gain is minimal. And because you still got, stock calipers and rotors, big heavy rotors, the parking brake is marginal, if it works at all. And it's, about $100 more than buying a brand new drum brake setup. So, and you have to have a different proportion of valve and different reasons. Now, a racing brake set, Strange, Willwood, TBM, whoever, their retainer plate is also the caliper mount. And it's thicker, and there's a recess that the bearing where it sticks out of the housing end, the retainer plate will go right over it. And again, it has to sit flush, but this, you'll have one piece. Race car, you want to lose as many parts as possible. That's why they run an O-ring bearing, and this isn't twice as heavy as it normally would be. This is race, or you can use this on a street vehicle, you just need the O-ring bearing. But I guess I've covered everything, I hope. I've already put one side together, I took a few pictures. Didn't take very long. A quick summary of how much I have in this axle. You add it up, I'm just going to spit out prices. I paid $60 for the center piece. $130 shipped for 3 feet of axle tube that I cut in half. That's shipping and everything. I'm giving it my total investment. The housing ends I bought at a swap meet for $60. They're probably $100 new, so use whatever math you want to use. I had the brakes. I don't know where they came from. If you had to buy new, they're $350. The axles, I didn't finish my thought, did I? Your cut to fit, I had a set of cut to fits without retainer plates in my Cotton Speedway. They only had one set at the price of $338, and they're already sold by the time I went back. These from Quick Performance with my upgrades. I almost forgot the most exciting and important upgrade. The access hole. So you can actually tighten these bolts. If you don't pay extra for the access hole, I think it's 20 bucks. You can do it. You can get behind there with a wrench, but it's not much fun. So the axle's complete. $440. So I spent, call it $100 more, but I got more. And they fit like a glove. Got them in less than a week. They're great to talk to on the phone. I don't work for them. I did once make a bet with the guy on the phone, and I won a t-shirt. I should have been wearing my t-shirt, but I don't have it. So $440 for the axles, and that just leaves the third member. And it's hard to build a decent one with a Detroit locker for much less than $1,500, and that's if you do it yourself. So I don't have that in it because I collected parts and had a few gifted parts, but if I had to go buy everything, it would at least cost me out of pocket $1,500 to buy a Detroit locker, a housing, the Daytona pinion support, bearings, the rest of the setup kit, a billet yoke or a big 1350 yoke. Yeah, that gets spendy, but well worth it. 9-inch Ford, and again, you can have extra center sections, you can work on it on the bench. So the parts are no more or less, with the exception you have to buy the third member housing. Then I'm looking at a couple of rear ends I need to do. The internal parts all cost about the same. So if you want to buy all this stuff for your 10 or 12 volt GM or whatever, 8.8 Ford, you're going to spend the same money. So you need the housing, third member housing, and a pinion support, and a few other pieces. You can step up to a 9-inch Ford. I've often, said it aloud that, if you want to build a fast car or a slow car, the parts don't cost that much more. If you're going to buy a camshaft, they all kind of cost the same. If you're buying a roller camshaft, they all kind of cost the same. How fast you want to go, it's just all in the specs. That's not true with all the parts. Transmissions, you can spend a lot of money, etc. But you get my point. Your initial investment, be it the quality and the potential of your part, you're spending X amount to start with, and then you got to spend the difference to go faster. But I'm rambling now. It's getting hot in here. I had to shut the fan off, and I'm going to go back up in the house, have a snack, maybe play some cards, and then come back down here and put this side together just like that. So we're going to call it done as far as assembling the rear end 9-inch Ford, 360 gear, Detroit locker, 31 spline, 62-inch wheel-to-wheel for my '49 Chevrolet pickup. Take her easy. Have a good night.